Okay, so here's exactly what you want to know. Spoilers, of course. To make a video such as this is to accept that closure never comes when you're ready for it, because closure only comes when there's simply nothing left to give. To acknowledge the end, to reject a future, and accept finality. That's what makes moments like this the hardest to convey. Even though it's time to say goodbye, that doesn't mean I want to, because closure is always, forever, devastatingly beautiful. And that's what this is, a video about devastating beauty, a video about closure into that forever and beautiful sky. I am not here to tell you that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a good movie, because that's not what you need to hear. What I am here to tell you is that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is not a superhero movie. It is not a world that's preoccupied with punching above its weight class. It is not about meticulously dissecting its own nuance, and this video is not an attempt to describe those interwoven fragments. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is not a film that has anything more to say other than exactly what it says so loudly and unapologetically. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 does not concern itself with the interests of the everyday MCU, nor does it hold any obligation to reinforce ligaments within the larger canonical body. What Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is, however, is an opera, a weighty, visceral explosion of purpose. Volume 3 exists in the forever sky. It plays within its atmosphere, it swims through its currents, it ponders about the clouds up there, and colors the periphery in a contextualized, regressive light. This manifestation of imagination and ambition presents us with an atmosphere that affords for the rains to pour, even when the sun is out and the rainbows aren't fading. If Drax is right, and he is, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 learns to swim within the pond of this forever sky. This opera emanates a twisted, overbearing, and uncomfortable reflection across the pond, and all it asks from us is to feel and feel openly. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 considers itself to be contained within itself because it is, and it is something needed. A never overstaying, never overemphasized, but fully realized final signature. It becomes that sky. It flies into the forever and surrenders itself to a cacophonous imagination. A film so intentionally overwhelming because it dares to be, when anything less simply wouldn't suffice. By squeezing every iota of conscience out of every scene all at once, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 justifies its own existence as a character-driven experience, and is the perfect send-off on every conceivable level.
Really? Tears?
Where did you go, squirrel?
In order for a movie like this to recontextualize the relationships it holds bared, a level of precision in its voice is required, and that voice extends far deeper than your atypical conversations. The more I sit, the more I find myself unable to shake this movie's palpable commitment to the flickering soul of early Marvel media. How this film captures an era of Marvel's highest marks, and maybe its most faithful interpretation yet, cannot be lost in translation. Where phases 1 through 3 were a compact core of equal parts story, purpose, and soul, it's apparent that Guardians Volume 3 speaks from its soul, about everyone on the team, giving way to that old long-lost purpose as its byproduct. Those two melodies, once intertwined, are further punctuated by the writing and world-building, and now the experience becomes visceral. Where the script has intent and the action carries nuances of character work that are specific to their histories, these connections are what made the tapestry of the Guardians what it was, and this trilogy what it is. The characters are real. They have complexities that magnify their egos. They carry their backstories with them from scene to scene. This commitment to the characters first and foremost is simply a love letter to the Guardians. Gunn rewards us. From scene to scene, there's just so much love baked into this movie. The love for individuals, the love of characters, the love of history, the love of worlds, and really, the love of evolution. The opening sprawl with Creep is a love of pathos. The use of color throughout this film is a love of palettes, the love of emotion through crisp distinctions in visual tone to the extreme character moments and celebrations of the team's history. The final conclusion of our heroes is a love of parallels. The love for both extremes, the emotional and canonical, is jarring and wonderful. Marvel's most broken family just so happens to be its best. Who would have thought? This love letter tackles loss, guilt, grief, and acceptance. Disseminating all of that is difficult because it requires a narrative sacrifice from a protagonist strong enough to carry the burden to act as a vessel through which the world gets its context. And of course, this was always meant for Rocket. This was always his story. For a large part, this movie isn't about the Guardians. It's about Peter and Drax and Rocket and all of the team who have closure to find, where only in the end is it a true Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's ultimately about the Guardians rehabilitating their present by reconciling with their past. Even traditional moments of dialogue or transitory periods that would normally come off shallow aren't. The purpose is everywhere. The identities of these characters are still intact, and they never feel as if they've been cannibalized by the recent homogenous flow of the larger universe. They're written like they're still themselves, their own characters. Their continuities continue here, and I love that. This movie was created lovingly for fans of this world and for these heroes, and not so much for the everyday Guardians enjoyer. The interpretation of the characters are so much more explosive and painful because of this attention, and given all that has happened to them, this is where Gunn stretches the maturity of this movie to its darkest limits, to fully realize the gravity of what you're seeing and feeling. There's love for the nuances of this world and its colors, chromatically and thematically. It's all gorgeous. This celebration of continuity is the ultimate reward for a story and a trilogy that now passes as a work of art, as a package of expressionism. It's the ultimate stamp of legacy. For the Guardians as a whole, for the world they inherit, for the characters and their souls, and for the journey we've all shared together as one family. Gamora said it best, with devastating beauty. I bet we were fun. The performances have impact, the dialogue has weight, the fight scenes are raw and bursting with personality, as they should be. This film, this trilogy, is enriched from its attention to the details because it chooses to be so unapologetically bold, so unabashedly loud, and so uncompromisingly authentic. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's crux is that it gives a damn about what it's saying and how it conveys its ideas, caring about the minutiae on nearly every exchange. Star-Lord reminds us that he's a capable Ravager who's smarter than he's been portrayed and makes his competency the focal point, using others' perception of him to his advantage. Nebula becomes a mother to the team after an arduous journey through 4 movies, while Drax and Mantis continue their growth from the holiday special to prove that being a father and caring for others is far more than just a redundant character trait. Rocket is given a heartbreaking evolution to become the very soul of the Guardians and earn his "I am Iron Man" moment when he says the name's Rocket Raccoon. Gamora is evolved through the evolution of Star-Lord and their temporal differences that align for a story about acceptance. This is one of the best love stories in Marvel history because it's real and it's not about fixing everything. They eventually end up in the same places where the other began their journey, but that's the disorienting residue of love. Love is complicated and broken, and sometimes it doesn't ever fix itself, but it still harmonizes in its own unique ways, and that's what makes it devastatingly beautiful. Everyone on this team comes back for one last ride in the end, and they finish what they started with a newfound weight carrying the group forward. Everyone has changed through the course of this film and even back to the original Guardians of the Galaxy, Everyone is reborn here in a new mentality, creating new moments for an evolved Guardians of the Galaxy team. With the imagination to use a dead Celestial's head as a cosmic battleship to the greatest one-take hallway fight in Marvel's history, this film pulls from the bombastic nature of comic books in a way unseen until now, inspiring new ideas and new lenses of perspective that have been missing in recent Marvel films. This film accomplishes so much from a narrative and tangible view, quantitatively of course. It challenges itself and executes against the odds. It's a good, exhaustive investment where it finds beauty in the most terrible things and works to balance that through real storytelling. The story sets up these characters to have emotional and physical moments that are earned by respecting what came before in Infinity War and Endgame, and it then contextualizes that in a new way to evolve the status of each Guardian. The imagery here moves like a cosmic tidal wave with some of the best and most poetic visuals you'll find, cementing itself as a true comic book movie. The world is immense, from its Lovecraftian inspirations to its cosmic horrors. It's beautiful in its celebration of comic books and the journey of the heroes. From the biggest of skyboxes to the smallest of details, such as Peter using an oxygen tube as a propulsion device to immediately surrendering his moment when the smallest bits of space debris kill his momentum. It's moments like this that make the movie work. The ultimate balance of heroism with reality, where grand inclusions can be grand, but mortality is a reminder that comes in small and poignant afflictions. Equal parts creativity and tragedy, Guardians Volume 3 pushes its best moments to exist dramatically and traumatically, and all of that works. It's one of the strongest conclusions you can have for a trilogy because it makes a point to conclude everyone. We are giving closure with everyone. Literally everyone got the ending they deserve, something that is so rare and so worth experiencing. This movie makes it a point to exhaust you, to exhaust the Guardians, and it's why we see them the way they are at the end, before their final goodbyes. Exhausted, tired, drained, fed up, longing for a different future. The Guardians split because they're tired of living in this world, and this is one of the realest and most authentically awesome parts of this movie. This movie and the actions in it feel earned, not given. The ending feels earned. This is the retirement they all deserve, and in no other way should this trilogy have ended. Volume 3 has a resonance to it that is purely, simply James Gunn. The title of Ambitiously Authentic is so prominent throughout this trilogy because its eloquence and loudness are found through every subtextual pattern, a Herculean achievement of cohesivity. This is the same feeling I have after a comic book finishes a masterful run or a 12-issue series concludes in ambitious fashion. This is a character-driven movie that just so happens to sit in the MCU, but it does so much to enrich the world nearly 15 years after its inception. This world, this director, celebrates an evolution of its nuclei and pulls them apart with such force. You'd be forgiven for mistaking this movie for a tragedy when that's secretly what it is. The lows are emotionally draining, and the highs are shots of pure ecstasy. Arguably, the greatest achievement of Volume 3 is its ability to walk both sides of the coin, to celebrate the profound resonance of character growth whilst dissecting the traumas each Guardian wears on their sleeve. Peter, Drax, Nebula, Mantis, Gamora, and of course, 89P13 all have something necessary to say, to give, and to let go of. Balancing this is akin to being in two places at once, damn near impossible and simply exhausting. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 perpetually spins across both sides of the coin, marking its presence on one extreme, then the other, oftentimes uncomfortably, but exactly how it should be. It's a film that's so unabashedly proud of its own legacy that it chooses to be obtuse openly, proudly, and generously, without destroying itself, its message, or its purpose. Volume 3's fundamental understanding of the Guardians and the commitment to challenging them against their subjective world creates a sharpness of tone that's rare, even for someone like James Gunn. With every thread and story beat and emotion and future all being juggled simultaneously, the tying of these knots is done with intent and poise, leaving the threads as poignant as ever for a conclusion that elevates the collective storytelling overall. If you save a hero, you then have to destroy them. If you destroy them, you must also save them. That's what makes heroes compelling, what makes them human or worth investing in. James Gunn loves the Guardians enough to know that he has to let them go. to mold them into what they need to be rather than what they were supposed to be. By destroying the Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn saved them, and he did so with love. And as always, thanks for watching.